The House then has to take this up. They're in conference with each other, and they hammer out some sort of accord. When is anyone's guess? But this fellow is knee-deep in this stuff and knows a lot more about it than I do. Georgia Republican Congressman Doug Collins. He is the House Republican Conference Vice Chair. Sir, very good to have you back.
Hey, Neil, it's good to talk to you.
How would that work? I've heard from a lot of your colleagues, Congressmen, in the House who are not keen on what they're hearing coming out of the Senate, and a skinny package or whatever they want to call it isn't flying with them. So that means they're diametrically opposed, and it could be quite a conference session. What do you envision?
Well, I think if that's what the Senate's wanting to do is to send it to conference, then they'll probably pick the strategy to get it there. I think this is something that we've dealt with before, Neil. I've been on here. We've talked about this before. The House did its work. You've got to take this as a whole package. Medicaid expansion, the issues around that, the taxes, the mandates, they're all part of this disaster called Obamacare. So to not deal with the big part of what we have done in the House and deal with how this will affect exchanges and mandates for the Medicaid expansion, I think is really setting us up for a conference that I just have the question. You've got the House bill. If you don't like the House bill, fine. Work it in ways to improve it or change it. But at the end of the day, we've seen the work of the House. Now the Senate's going to come to us in conference. And I would just like to say that the folks who are voting like yesterday against the repeal, the 7 who changed, I respect their right. But my question is, if you've got 200% increases in Alaska and premium increases, you've got these things going on all over the country, and you didn't have a replacement then, you know, I'm a little bit more into saying we need to go back and say this is bigger than a message. This is about the whole of American people, and that's our hope here in the House, because we need to get this stuff done. And the President is asking for it. The President is working for it. We need to focus and do that.
You know, I know they're going to argue back, Congressman, this is the best we could do. We have a couple of members like Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, who no means no, and, you know, we'll respect their differences and all, but we're already between a rock and a hard place. This is the best we can do. Maybe we can carve out something down the road with our House friends like you. But it would be more than just carving something out. It would have to be something entirely different. And it looks like it would be something very, very different than what the Senate just did, and very, very different from what you guys just did.
Well, I'm not sure. It may be different in maybe what's in it, but structural-wise, you know the parts that have to be dealt with here. And I think that's the issue that I'm trying to point out to our membership and also the Senate membership. You've got to deal with the taxes. You've got to deal with the mandates. You've got to deal with Medicaid expansion if you're truly going to make a difference in turning the trajectory around on health care in this country. I tell this to Neil up here. I do tours at night, and I have visitors when I go back home, and I speak to groups, and I tell them this. I said, when I get my voting card out, I have yes, no, and present. That's my only 3 choices. If I had perfect, I'd vote perfect every time. And all I would encourage my Senate colleagues and even my House colleagues as well is we don't have a perfect button. We've got to move this thing forward to get it better, because right now the Obamacare is in a death spiral. You can't fix what is that badly broken. And to simply say we're going to stop and we're only going to put forward a little bit, and then knowing at conference we're going to ask for more, then I think we all got to come to the table and say what is best for the American people, and that's always the first goal we've got to have.
Could I switch gears, if you'll indulge me,
sure,
sir? And it concerns this talk that maybe raised initially by Steve Bannon, the chief strategist of the White House, to put a surtax on the very rich, those earning over $5 million a year, to hike that to 44%. Now, I always look at those kind of, discussions as being trial balloons. Either they mean to go even lower than the $5 million, because you can only get $18 billion or so out of that. But that this is telegraphing the White House stance that someone is going to have to pay more so they can sell this to the American people, and maybe to reluctant moderates, and maybe some Democrats. What do you think?
Well, I think, like Ken said before, I think this is the trial balloon. I hope it doesn't go real high up, because this is something that we've fundamentally have looked at. Tax reform is something that we can work on every level, and you've got to understand the interaction between the middle class and the working, and then also, as you just said, where does that, and we've seen it happen in others. You're going to tax, quote, millionaires, but then we end up seeing it go down as far as, in some cases, in some of these pros, down to $250,000 to $300,000. I think what we've got to do is we've got to redo the entire system. We got to bring down individual rates, pass-through rates, the corporate rates. We've got to have a fundamental closing of loopholes that get us back to a tax system system that actually works and puts capital back in use. And simply trying to play one off the other is something we've tried now for almost 30 years and see where it's got us. So I think when we begin tax reform and we get these principles out there, there'll be a lot of ideas. But let's go with things that work. Let's put the things in working that we know will work, and that is what we just talked about a comprehensive tax reform package that includes the cuts, includes the reforms, that makes it simple for the American people, and the world again looks at our economy and says it's already the best in the world. They also now have a tax system to go along with it.
You know what I learned in this interview, Congressman? Besides the fact that you're a very smart guy, but you give tours.
Yes.
I'd like to be on that tour because the last guy I had didn't even know we were in the Capitol. But very good having you again, sir. I hope you have a safe weekend.